So John Cena just retired a few days ago, and this is definitely a very, very controversial take. I know some people may say, "Oh, Byron, you're cooking some chocolate chip cookies in the oven right now. Do they have some marijuana in them or something like that? Because are you a little high or whatever?" But I would kind of say that when you think about like professional wrestling, some people are talking about who's going to be the next like John Cena or the next big thing. And I think, honestly, in my opinion, here's a controversial take that I think MJF could be the next John Cena. And what I mean by that is a wrestler that could be larger than life and actually changing the cultural zeitgeist. And there's a couple of things that you have to do in order to be a professional wrestler that becomes on the level of John Cena or Hulk Hogan or a couple other ones as well, really. That, first of all, you need to be a wrestler that represents the cultural zeitgeist. And ultimately, that means you got to be a wrestler of the sign of the times. When you look at somebody like Hulk Hogan, the reason why he was such a megastar was because he represented the perfect American against the foreign forces, like against the foreigners. So, like, during the Cold War, you had the ultimate American hero, which is Hulk Hogan. And then when you look at the 1990s, you had Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was like the beer drinking, unapologetic, like he could be a Jerry Springer guest, So that's kind of why he resonated with that culture. And then you look at somebody like John Cena, who was the American soldier after 9/11. A lot of people were into that white rapper, wigger culture at that time. And then also too, America was looking for a hero. That's why like the Spider-Man movies and the superhero films became popular after after 9/11, really. As the Nickelback song goes, and they say that there's a hero that can save us, and and I don't remember the rest of the song really, but then you kind of look at maybe in the 2010s, there's really no megastar wrestler outside of CM Punk. If you think about it, because he represented Occupy Wall Street with the people speaking their minds about corruption and politics and unfairness and people getting edges and saying, hey, you know what? Let's talk about what goes on backstage. We're not blind to this, So he kind of became like the voice of the voiceless. So, like in Occupy Wall Street, people are becoming more mindful about, hey, you know what? This is kind of, this is what's going on with the world. And then you come with MJF, really. And I think that MJF, has a lot of strengths and weaknesses. Like he can be representative of American culture because he represents the Generation Z, and there's ways they do this. He's spoiled, he's entitled, he is a sociopath. He does whatever the hell he wants, and he's very unapologetic. Like the world has to bow down to MJF, and he's also very manipulative. Like as I told some people, if you really want to understand what MJF's gimmick is, he's a person who is a sociopath, and then also he plays it so well that you don't understand if that's who he is as a person, or if that's a character that he's playing really. And that's part of what a sociopath does is that they're like, okay, whatever they want to do, whatever emotion they want to elicit other people, it's always about whatever they want really. And I think with MJF, he may want to be remembered really. I think I've told people the story about what happened to me, like when they were up in Hartford, MGF and FTR were offering people pizza. But I remember like when I reached for one, he intentionally just like shoved the box against me and ran away. There's another time when there was somebody drinking in the audience, he took their drink and he poured the drink on them. Like he always kind of has that behavior instigation, really. And I think one of the reasons why he does that is because this happened to me like 3 or 4 years ago, but I'm talking about it now. Like he always tries to create a memory with people, and John Cena does that really. So I really think that in so many cases, his character and what he does as a wrestler is that he tries to get an emotion out of you, and that's kind of what you do really. And I think that going back to analyzing why he works as a mainstream wrestler is because he has the unapologetic behavior. He's very selfish. He cares about himself. He doesn't play by the rules. And that happens a lot nowadays. So you look at a lot of politicians, You look at Donald Trump and his thing in Venezuela and other things like that. There's a lot of people who are successful by not playing the rules. There's a lot of people who are outspoken by saying, yes, there's unfair advantages, and I'm taking advantage of that. The other thing about it is that he told everybody that he has ADHD. And the thing about him is that he does bad things to people. And as him and Osprey talked about, which is, what Osprey says, I have ADHD too, but I don't choose to be an asshole to people. You do, MJF. And there's a lot of people with mental health issues nowadays who are sociopaths who say, because I have a mental illness, I can get away with stuff. Like with me, I'm diagnosed with autism. Like there's paperwork saying that I'm autistic. However, there was another psychiatrist that I saw that said I'm not autistic. And it's more like I have antisocial issues because of trauma and other things like that. And also, too, I grew up with domestic violence and some child abuse and emotional abuse and some sexually inappropriate behavior. But what I'm trying to say with my life was that whenever I got in trouble as a kid, my dad would be my lawyer. So he would ultimately be like, hey, Byron has a mental illness. Byron has a learning disability. Don't suspend him from high school. Mental illness, mental illness, mental illness. Or I remember a few years ago I had a job. It didn't work out. My dad said something like, oh, well, maybe you need to take medication after this job to kind of, help you out, really. But there's always been that thing about people with mental illness, about some of them learn that they can get away with stuff because they have mental illness, like MJF, or some of them have parents who teach them to get away with things because their parents don't want to see them in trouble. They're like, oh, well, we're going to blame everything on the mental illness. So you can use that in his character, like, oh, well, he thinks that because he's manipulative, he thinks that because he's conniving, he thinks that because he knows how to get a reaction out of people, he thinks that because he has a mental illness like ADHD, he's excused from being a shitty human being, stuff like that. And I think that that's a character that could be mainstream. He could be a really big mainstream heel. Like, he could be like a mix of John Cena and Randy Orton in a way. I think that can work, like a darker version of that, like an evil John Cena and a Randy Orton. He could definitely do that. So I really think that culturally he could be the next big wrestler. He could kind of be part of that cultural shift because there's a lot of people who are sick and tired of the woke culture, who are sick and tired of the combination culture, who are sick and tired of sensitivity. Because you remember what happened when MJF threw the drink into the kid's face. There are people saying that was racist because he threw it in a black kid's face. The other thing, it was that, a lot of people are saying that that's a little too far because, you don't throw a drink in somebody's face because you don't know if it's alcoholic or not. And then the other part of it was that he did it the right way, which was he was unapologetic. He said it is what it is, and he moved the fuck on, really. And that's kind of what you do. And Donald Trump is a master of that. And there's many people who are a master of that, which is that when you do a shitty thing, you have to apologize and become a better person. And then people will see weakness in you because you showed vulnerability. And then that's when people tear you down. Or you got to be unapologetic. And then people won't tear you down because they know that, oh, you're going to just say, you know what, I just pissed on your lawn. What about it? Type of thing, really. So yeah, I remember like when he did that got a lot of attention, really. But if he kind of did more of that stuff, or imagine if like the kid wanted to see Powerhouse Hobbs, imagine if you took that and then you're like, okay, now Powerhouse Hobbs is going to get revenge for this kid, like saying, oh, well, you picked on one of my own, really. Not necessarily a racial thing, but, oh, well, you picked on one of my fans, type of thing, really. So there could have been like, that could have been something, really. There's so many things that MJF could do, could have done in the past to really to be that mainstream star. I think like with AEW, he could have been their AJ Styles. He could have been their Rob Van Dam. He could have been their Ric Flair in WCW. He could have been their Sting. He could have been their Hulk Hogan or John Cena. He could have been like this mainstream star for AEW. If he was booked that well, or if they kind of said, hey, you know what, you represent American culture with your character of a Generation Z entitled douchebag doing whatever the fuck they want and no consequences. So that's kind of why I think he could have been, that's why I think he has the potential, really. But like I said, it comes down to a couple of things. I think the first thing is bad booking. The second thing is that MJF does not care about being a professional wrestler. MJF cares about being MJF. So right now he's at the point where he's in Hollywood movies and other things like that. And the reason why he does that is because, he doesn't want to become like a Darby Allin, where Darby Allin will go through burning tables and other shit like that. He wants to have a career really, and then that's just like you look at The Rock, you look at John Cena, you look at Batista. What does that tell you really? They're going to be making money the rest of their lives. They're going to have $1 million mansions for the rest of their lives versus being a professional wrestler and being battered and broken down, and then you're living in a low income housing when you're in your when you're old and stuff like that. So he doesn't care about the fans. He doesn't care about anybody, but he cares about his career. Really, he cares about what's going to make MJF money. That's one of the big things. He's not going to sacrifice himself. He's not going to become a cultural icon because he knows there may not be that long term longevity. You kind of look at Ric Flair. He was kind of part of that '70s party, unapologetic culture, but Ric Flair is kind of fucking broke now. And Sting is still here when he was a cultural icon in the '90s. He represented like Crow and the goth culture, but Sting is doing the exact same thing too, where he doesn't have the bucks to retire really. So I would kind of say that that's one of the reasons why he's not like that. The other issue is bad AEW booking. That there was a time with AEW when they first started, a lot of people were giving them a lot of chances because they're like, hey, this is this new company. They need time to figure things out. Let's just watch this for a while. But kind of that boat has shifted really. It's like ultimately AEW is kind of like TNA wrestling when Hogan and Bischoff was around, except with lower views. So there might be a point of no return for that, but it might be even too late for AEW. It might just be, that 500, 600,000 thousand view until they get so low they're off of television, or until they're so low that they have to do like, okay, we're gonna do YouTube where you gotta watch it weekly, like with Ring of Honor or TNA Wrestling before they got on television or something like that. So there might be a point where Jeff could be built very well. He can have the AW machine. You can have like good writers. You can actually have me and other people who know how to write really good, compelling stories actually join AW to help make sure MJF is strong. Really, but there could be a point of we're past that now. And then I think the next thing is that it's not in the cards because I think with AEW right now, one of the big problems with AEW is that they're in repeat mode. Like there's kind of hints that you may see Swerve and Hangman Part 2. Samoa Joe, he might be retiring, so you're kind of doing a retirement angle with the title, like you did with Sting and Darby Allin. With Samoa Joe, Tony Storm and Mina Shirakawa, they might turn heel, and they might turn heel, and then you give Tony Storm another title. Mercedes has the championships, so there's a lot of just like repetition in AEW. So I think kind of like the concern is ultimately, when you have a wrestler like MJF, how do you get the best out of him? How do you become mainstream? How do you say, like the first show they did, I think they had 2 million viewers. How do you go back? How do you say, MJF, we need to work with you to get that 2 million audience? Hey, MJF, we were selling out, Arthur Ashe Stadium, a few years ago. Now we're at a point where we can't go to Arthur Ashe Stadium anymore. We have to go to the Manhattan Center, 3,000 seat arena. How do we make you this megastar? And ultimately, does Tony Khan care about this? Does MJF care about this? Does the bookers and the writers care about this? So I do think it is an opportunity for MJF to become a big megastar. But definitely there's a lot of factors that are working against that happening. And it's definitely the responsibility of Tony Khan, number one, but MJF number two, really, because honestly, wasn't the goal with professional wrestling to be a legacy, to be remembered for generations, really? So, like I said, I think he has potential to be the next big star in professional wrestling, to be the next John Cena, but I don't think that's ever going to happen because he doesn't want it, and AEW doesn't want it, and AEW can't figure it out, and if they really want to go in that direction. So it's unfortunate, but I think he could be the next big star in professional wrestling after John Cena.